It is time now for another wonderful tale from the one and only Eddie Lenihan, which means it is time for another instalment of Seanchaí Corner. Seanchaí Corner, of course, sees Eddie, the renowned author, storyteller, lecturer and broadcaster, regaling us with a memorable story from his extensive collection of old Irish tales and fables. And this week, Eddie brings us the strange tale of Tomás O'Shea and the Seal Woman.
There isn't a GAA person in Ireland but won't know about the O'Sheas, and the Kerry team especially. Watch them going up for the ball and the mighty catch they have. Mighty players, the O'Sheas. But why? I'll tell you why, and I'll explain it. In a place called Carrathrontig, behind Dingle, there was a fellow one time, one of the O'Shea family, called Tomás O'Shea. His father and mother died when he was fairly young, and he was left alone in the house. Good worker, good dancer, nice young man. But he was always looking to get married. But, no. It wasn't that the women didn't want to marry him, not at all, because, like I say, he was a good worker. But this particular day, he was down in his bit of a garden, not so far from the shore, and whatever look he gave out, there on a rock, he saw this lovely-looking woman. And he knew the place now well, and he knew the shoreline well. And he wondered, what in the name of heaven was she doing there, because it was a dangerous place for the tide. So he stuck down his spade in the ground, and he went down, and he said to her, he said, you're in a place there, and if the tide comes in, you could be swept like that. Now, he got a good look at her, and she was no local woman. She wasn't dressed like one. She was well dressed, and she had a little capine on her head, a little lace capine. She looked like one of the gentry. And now, that mightn't be surprising, because Lord Ventry's house in Birmingham wasn't so far away. And there was no tourists in those days, of course. No tourists, so she wasn't a tourist or anything like that. But she took no notice of him. She looked at him all right, but never a word out of her. What more could he do? She didn't look like one of his class, so he went back to his work. But he'd always look back, but there she was on the rock all the time. Anyway, he went on with his work. But come the evening time, just before he went home, he looked back again. She was gone. And he cursed himself. Why didn't I do something? Because she was the finest looking woman he had ever seen in the place. And he went to bed that night, and he couldn't sleep, tossing and turning, and God damn it, why didn't. But anyway, following morning, he was in the same garden again, because I don't know, was he setting spuds or digging spuds or whatever he was doing, because the same man, he'd always be doing something. He went down, and there she was, above on the rock again. And now he was thinking to himself, will I, won't I, will I, won't I? He had enough time to be thinking of it before, so down he went. And he crept up, and the little cap she was wearing, it was embroidered, lovely, and he snatched it, and he says, I'll make her talk one way or another. And as soon as he did, she said, Tomás O'Shea, give me my cap. How well she knew his name. But he pulled away and pulled back, and by God, she followed him, and followed him all the way back to the house. I suppose looking for the cap, of course. Give me my cap. But he inveigled her in and said, no, not meaning to do any harm. And he said, look, stay and have something to eat at least. And he persuaded her in. And when she was there, look, he tried to talk reasonably. Look, why? And she did stay. And he said, look, while you're here, I'm trying to find a woman for a while, and there's no one in this place that'll marry me. For one way or another, he persuaded her. But maybe the reason was the cap. He had hidden it while she was still coming on and on. And where he hid it was above the loft. There was a little space between the rafter and the thatch. He used to hide things there, little valuable, not big things now. If he had a sovereign to spare, maybe a little bit of gold spare. God knows there's little gold he'd have, but he'd put him in there behind the rafter under the thatch. That's where he put the cap. He persuaded her. And now to say a woman like that would be persuaded to be married to him, I tell you, there must be something in that cap. He went to the priest anyway, and he asked the priest, will you marry us? And of course the priest, who is she? Who is she? Why, how did you come on somebody like... But, look, Father... and he explained to the priest, and the priest said, well, I suppose we'll avoid scandal, because you know the people around here, they will be talking and they'll be saying, God only knows where he got this woman, or they're living together. And they were married. To make the story short, they were married. He paid the priest and they were married. And she stayed 5 years and they had 3 children, 2 boys and a lovely girl. But she was always searching around, looking around and looking around. He mightn't see her doing it, but she was. Now, this particular day, she was out, and he was thinking to himself, is there any better place I can put the cap? But he said he'd leave it alone. She hadn't discovered it yet. So he did. And he was ploughing his garden as usual a little while after, and didn't the plough break? Something in the plough broke. He came in. She was out in the yard, and he went up in the loft where he had his old bits, an attic now. There'd be bits and pieces thrown here and there, old sacks and small bits, and yourself, if you have an attic, to be like a junk room. And the piece of when he threw out the piece to fix the plough, didn't the cap fall out from behind the rafter? The weather was warm, and I suppose they had separated. The thatch and the rafter had separated, and in his rooting, didn't the cap fall out and fell down? He didn't notice it. He was in such a fuster to get his plough fixed, and didn't she find it? Hid it in her pocket, in her apron, said nothing, and a short time afterwards, day afterwards, what did she do? This evening, washed the children, combed their hair, changed their clothes, kissed them, and just at the same time, there was this fierce roaring and roaring heard out in the sea, like 15, 20 seals roaring. Of course, who was it? Only her family and friends. Down she went, without he seeing her, to the same rock. The tide was in she went, and off. And when he came back, there was no sign of her, of course. He had been out in the garden. There was no sign of her. And there were the children crying. Reddy, and of course he had no idea. He searched the place. But she was gone. And never seen again. She was gone back with the other seals, because that's what she was, Countess Naroin. And from that day on, the O'Sheas, they have that little webbing between their fingers and their toes. It has got tiny and tinier with every generation since. But the people there, they always say that that's why the O'Sheas have such a wonderful catch when they're catching a ball in the air or kicking a ball, because of that little extra bit of help. And they're wonderful swimmers too. Wonderful swimmers, because we know where that particular lot of them came from. True or false, I do not know. But that's the story.
And Eddie Lenihan there with another fantastical tale for Seanchaí Corner.